Hey folks, Ariel over here at Nyth. Today I want to do a quick look at how trees are doing. If you want a little bit of the more long-term plans and thoughts about what's going on here, go see the video planting Fedorist. It was a few weeks ago, not terribly long ago. Anyway, this is a little cherry tree, but what you're looking at overall here, as far as the trees between me and the house, is our orchard. There's cherries, apples, plums, some apricots, and some pears. All the cold hardiest varieties. I'm fairly certain this one, I've got two of these cherries. They're Evans Bali cherries, that's the variety. Pretty sure they will actually do well here. I have a friend in the area who has one has a couple that are 30 years old and that produce buckets and buckets of cherries every year. So I got some real world experience with the fact that they should for sure work. Some of the others I'm going on what's written about them and that they should survive. But a few of the trees, like that one apple over toward the house and the one pear, are a little taller than me. This guy's about the same height as me, and some are smaller. Some of the tallest ones were the ones I got started last fall, that you saw one of the first videos on this spring of getting them planted. They were from a local nursery in big pots. And right over here are some of the ones that I started as bare root trees. Let's see what they're looking like now.
But first, let's go back to mid-May and see where some of these started.
Hey folks, Ariel over here at Nyth, which you get to see in her new home. Today I want to do another video on tree planting. I need my shovel. And don't worry, you're not going to have to sit around and watch every single one of the trees I plant. But the last one I did was planting all things that were either purchased in pots or like some of the aspens and little pine trees that were dug up from wild places where either the baby trees were growing super thick and couldn't all grow up, or where they were growing out into edges of like hay fields where they were going to get mowed off anyway. Today what I'm doing is planting what's called a bare root tree. You can probably see why it's called that. There's bare roots. Now these just showed up in the mail. Sometimes you can get them from local nurseries. This is a plum, and I'm going to show you how I plant them because it's just a little different than planting something with dirt already around the roots. The main reason you would do this is because it lets you ship them much more efficiently as far as weight and package size for one. So what I've got here is some well-rotted, 7-8 year well-rotted wood chips. So that's going to be some fertilizer. I'm putting some of that in the hole, and my hole is not super deep, as you can see. Now it was fluffed up. Clay did this for me last night when he had a minute, which was awesome, to rip the sod and kind of use the backhoe scoop to fluff this dirt up so it's loose. But I'm actually making kind of a mound in the middle, because what we're going to do is we're going to spread this guy's roots out. So my mound's a little too high. It needs to go down a little more. But we're going to spread the roots kind of out around that. And I want to give all of them plenty of room to grow. That one likes to stick down. So every tree is a little different. You have to kind of custom make your mound to fit. But you can kind of see where the soil level was at in the nursery. This is a grafted tree, so right there is the graft. And if you bury it to above the graft, it'll probably grow out whatever rootstock is on the bottom. That's not what I'm going for. I want the plum variety that's on the top here. So I don't want to bury it higher than that. I want to have my dirt level somewhere like that. So for that one stiff root, I need this to go down just a little further. That is almost there. Okay. I'm going to say that's a good level, and all these other little stringy roots I'm going to kind of spread out to the sides here so they have plenty of room to get growing. I could wad them all up and stuff them in the middle, but I don't want that. I want them to be able to go out around and absorb as many nutrients as they can, as quick as they can. So I'm going to prop enough dirt around him to keep him standing upright there. See if he looks pretty straight. Fairly much so. Make sure I got all those roots. I'm not going to stomp on them. and put some more soil back over it. So that's fairly simple. Now when these guys got here, there was several, not all plums, but several different trees in the box, actually quite a few, and they were all kind of packed together. So I pulled them apart. They were packed very well. These came from Burnt Ridge Nursery. We'll have to see how they survive, but so far I'm very happy with how they looked when they got here and the packaging and all that. So they were all packed in there, and they were packed in wet newspaper just to keep them moist during shipping. And I unpacked them from that. Gotta get the soil kind of settled around that root ball. And stuck them in a bucket of water that's right off there to the side for a little bit to help them kind of reabsorb as much moisture as they could before sticking them into the ground. Now this tree is almost still dormant for the year, which means it's basically sleeping for a tree. It does have little leaves just starting to come out, and I even see one tiny little plum blossom. And if you weren't aware, on the first year growth, obviously this is probably a 3 or 4 or even 5-year-old tree already, but the first year here, I want it to put its energy into getting strong. So after it gets some blossoms, I am going to go through and pick them all off, which is kind of sad, but I don't want it to try to use its limited energy to make fruit this year. Even though having a couple fresh plums would be terrific, in the long run, I should get a much better yield and a healthier tree if I pick them off so it can't put its resources into that and instead spends the next year growing better roots, better branches, better trunk, all that, and then decide next year if it looks like it's well established enough to actually let it try to set some fruit. So I'm just going to fill in around the roots here with my loosest soil, kind of gently. Then I'm going to go get some water and kind of water it in because the dirt should settle into some of those gaps between the roots. And roots do need air, but they don't like giant air pockets. That's not generally good for them. They'll dry out. So I'm going to water the soil in a little bit once I've got it around the base here. And then I'll do just exactly what you saw me do with the other trees. Once I've got the dirt filled all back in and up to the soil level, I'll make a little mulchy mound of my wood chips on top, and I'll probably get some of the other kind of fruit tree guild species planted near it. Like the orchard trees behind me there already have comfrey, clovers, and strawberries growing around them. Not big enough yet to show up, but that's what they have, and this guy will have the same. So that's a quick look at how you deal with a bare root tree as opposed to getting something in a big round pot. Now you get to watch me finish. I'm hoping I don't get entirely rained out, but like you saw me planting that bare root plum tree, this is that same tree. This is how it is leafed out and grown. Let me see if I can show you. Like on this branch, this stick right where my fingers are is where it stopped when I planted it. It grew out all that growth this spring. Again, over in this one, this stick where my fingers are, that's where it had stopped, and this is a whole new branch. And there's lots more like that. So hopefully it's getting well established and putting down some roots. And again, around it, we're getting our useful companion plants, permaculture setup, whatever you want to call it. This is another mint family plant. This is called catmint or monarda. It's another beautiful minty smell. I also make teas out of it. It's beautiful for the pollinators. Got more strawberries growing, more comfrey. I think I put something on that side that didn't make it because I don't remember what it was. So we'll put something else in that gap. And all these things will spread some and fill in, and hopefully eventually there won't be grass in this area at all. There'll be all my more useful plants being the mulch and living carpet under the fruit trees. But I thought it'd be fun to see, since you saw me plant this tree as a bare dead stick, to see just how much it has grown out since then. So here around the base of just one apple tree, for an example, I've got comfrey growing, a little clump of it there. Come over to here, I've got a clump of strawberries growing. These things will all spread themselves. That was just, that's actually alfalfa that was growing here wild. These are blanket flowers. They also grow well here. And I had put in a little tiny hyssop plant somewhere right here, but I don't see it, so I think it didn't survive the transplanting. So I'll have to do some more of that. It's a kind of mint. I'll put some kind of mint back in here. And you can kind of see how I've pulled back all the grass and stuff, though it's regrowing once again, to give this stuff room, because eventually I want the ground cover under these trees to be these kind of plants that are useful for various things, for feeding pollinators, for feeding me, for making tea, and for feeding the soil, and just helping each other out. So every tree's got a little different combo of flowers and plants under it, but this is one example. Here's another example of what's going on around the base of just a different tree for variety. This is a hyssop that I transplanted that I had started from seed in the old location. This one did survive. That is in the mint family. It makes a beautiful blossom pollinators love, plus I love making tea. It's kind of almost a licoricey flavored mint. Makes a wonderful tea. We've got some blanket flower and some chamomile, some more comfrey, and garlic chives coming up around that one. And that one's a cherry tree. This again was a bare root stick, just looked like a dead stick when I planted it in the ground this spring, and it was this tall. So a whole bunch of these are new branch growth since it was planted. From my fingers on up, that's all new. From there out is new. This whole one is new. That whole one is new, etc. So you can see how much growth it's pushed out in a single year. Again, over here, these are not a tree, they're a bush. They can get to be a big bush. Yeah, barely, you're right in the way. Up to 12, 14 foot tall maybe at the most, but these are a kind of currant. This was another one that was a bare root stick this spring, and it actually, I don't know if you can see these few, made a few red berries in addition to leafing out and growing up. And again, like the dead looking stick I planted stopped right there. That's all new growth. It's pushed new growth out here. And again, around it, I've got a couple strawberries. And this I started from seed. That pretty little red thing is a little red clover. They're a good nitrogen fixer, good for the pollinators. And I just scattered those seeds all over this spring. I've got some, I probably would have had better germination if it hadn't been so hot and dry, but it's raining on me now, and so hopefully that stuff will keep growing. So I planted quite a few different kinds of currant bushes. Wild currants grow well here, and these are some domesticated currant varieties, which are just a little easier to pick, a little bigger, all of that as well. This is one of the now larger ones, not that tall because I have to kneel for it to be taller than me, but larger ones I planted as a bare root. This is a Idaho Carpathian English walnut. They're supposed to be cold hardy. It was a dead stick that stopped right here when I planted it, and for a long time it didn't grow anything out. I thought maybe it hadn't made it, and then all of a sudden one day it started shooting out leaves. This branch comes out right here where you can see my hand, and it's grown clear up to here. That much just in like half a summer, because for the first half of summer it did nothing visible. I see 2 earthworms crawling on the ground. And again, I haven't got things planted under every single tree, but these were a radish that's grown up and just gone to seed, which is what I wanted. The bees and stuff love it. And, back to making my ground covers under all the trees. But I thought this was cool because I really thought it was dead, and it is not. And I'm not going to take the time to show every single one of the 230 bushes and trees we've planted. Partly because the video will go on forever, and partly because I'm getting kind of wet now. It's raining more, which is wonderful, all except for the camera work part. But here's another example. These are all little aspen trees through here. They're a native tree in the area. These were dug up from the edge of a hayfield where they were spreading from their parent, thicket, and they would otherwise have just been mowed off and killed. So we dug them up. A few we transplanted seem to have not made it, but the vast majority did. So they're growing. They'll eventually be a tall tree with white bark. Back here, you can see a little fir tree that was transplanted. It was only about this big. This was one we got in last fall. So it's grown up quite a bit, grew out new needles. Got more radishes blooming beside it. As I come on over here, this is an elderberry. Some of the top sticks died. I transplanted this one last fall as well. It was growing near the house in the old location. I planted it there. And some of the top sticks died, but it grew out well from the base. And it's even blooming. Some of the blossoms are already done and starting to make berries. A few are still blooming. They're beautiful white blossoms. So you get the idea. This is an area where I haven't yet gotten back to around to clearing the grass and stuff away. So you can see what I'm talking about needing to clear that stuff back so that not everything I want to have growing gets choked out by it. But overall, the majority of things, despite the very challenging weather, are doing pretty well, which is very exciting to see. So right here, beside where the one water line goes, you can see a little rose bush. This particular variety is supposed to make very big rose hips, which I use for making teas and such. And beside it, right here, you can see one of the hardy peas that I threw seed around for this spring as well, because they're also a nitrogen fixer. They'll just grow up and die back, adding more nutrients to the soil. This one's a chestnut variety. You can get an idea of the size of the leaves there with my hand. This stands about waist tall to me now. It was another one of the bare root sticks this spring. That's what it's looking like. There is a much smaller elderberry. This was started from a little tiny bare root stick in the spring. The big tall one you saw was one that I had bought as a potted plant 6 years ago and had growing for all those years near the house in its old location, and then transplanted last fall. So this one's only a foot tall now, but hopefully it'll be much taller soon. And there's a few like this. You can't see this because that is a dead looking stick. That is still a dead stick. That was another rose. Most of them took off. I think there was 2 that just didn't. I don't know why, but it just turned into nothing. I expected a certain percentage of losses, especially when planting that many that were that little, and that was not even taking the weather into account. So overall, I'm pretty happy, but there are a few like that. Several of the bare root sticks did this. This is a sea buckthorn, and you can see it's leafing out pretty well all around here, but the whole top part of the stick didn't do anything. It just died. I planted a bunch of these. They're another nitrogen fixing shrub and an edible berry, and they should turn into a big shrub. But right now, the green part of that is a foot off the ground. This is not a tree or a shrub. This is just for fun. Mushrooms popping up where I had, mulched things with wood chips. There's a whole little ring of them hiding under there. Kind of goes in a circle. You can barely see that one under there, but all the moisture made them pop up. Let's show you how very far from perfect things look here all the time, or not that they don't look perfect all the time. This in the middle is what I call Amy's plum. My friend Amy had some growing at their house when they bought it. They don't know what kind it is. It grows well, and she gave me one of them. Beside it is a giant bull thistle, which I don't really want there, but this is back to another spot I haven't got weeded around yet. But in front of it here, see that beautiful red clover? That was part of what I had planted, and I think it's lovely. Tried to start a little bamboo patch there. It was growing pretty well, sent out a lot of new leaves, and it seemed to get kind of stressed and sit still and not do anything with all the heat. So maybe with this rain and a little cooler weather, it'll grow back out. It was a darker green, now it's kind of turned that paler yellow shade. But it's supposed to be a very cold hardy bamboo variety, so hopefully it'll do okay. This big tall bush that actually goes to above my head is a lilac, and it's kind of leaned sideways. It was one I got on a dollar sale years ago, the end of a season, when you can see the remains of some of its blossoms for the year, when the store was throwing away all their plants they didn't want to deal with anymore. It looked pretty pathetic, and I thought, well, for $1 I'll give it a chance. And I stuck it in the ground near where the tiny house was, and it grew up like that, kind of leaning sideways. So if it recovers from transplanting and makes it here, we'll probably do some trimming to get it to straighten out. But also under it, you can see a bunch of peppermint growing, which is wonderful. Makes it another great ground cover and a wonderful tea. That little brown beauty there is dead. That was a Scotch pine. It's supposed to be very hardy, very good for making quick windbreaks and such. I planted 10 of them. That's the only thing where I had every single one die. I don't know if it was just the extreme heat right after transplanting or what. They weren't very tall, and every one is dead. So that was my biggest failure of everything I planted. So I'll try again another year. This is another little one that stands about waist high. That's a black walnut, also grown from a bare root plant. Should be very cold hardy. It got froze off right after it had started to leaf out. You can see kind of the remains of the little black leaves in there. and I thought that might have killed it, but it leafed back out. So hopefully it survives. Here's one that's actually above my waist. This is a little silver maple tree. It is leafing out along there. Not very big yet. Hopefully one day it will be. It's another little maple. I have both silver and sugar maples planted. This one's only about 2.5 feet high, but it's growing. Hopefully again it will turn into a beautiful tree one of these days. And I do have a few bigger trees and bushes. This is a honeyberry bush. There's a size comparison. It gets a little, some of it looks and tastes a little bit like a blueberry, except kind of elongated, not round. That's another one I had growing beside the tiny house before moving, and so it's a lot larger. There's another patch where you can see a bunch of that red clover mixed into the grass, just starting to bloom. And a spot where you can see clover and peas that I planted growing, as well as some thistles, which I did not. Here's some more fun little mushrooms that popped up with the rain. Aren't they cute? And on this cherry tree, which was planted last fall, you can see it even has one cherry there. And if we come the whole way up to the top, there's one more hiding. Now, I don't know that those 2 cherries will actually get ripe before the birds eat them, but we did grow 2 cherries this year. Some more fun little brownish yellow funguses hiding down there in the grass and clover. Isn't this a pretty bush? This is another elderberry. This one is a golden one, so no, its leaves aren't sick. They are supposed to be gold, and it kind of stands out bright and pretty, even in the summer. Most things that I'm showing you here, if I show you one, I have anywhere from, 2 to 10 of each thing planted. I didn't plant just one of really anything. Here's a small bush cherry, planted last fall, about waist high to me now. Right over there, you can see a good comfrey patch coming up, and that's doing well. So it's raining pretty good. I'm going inside. That gives you a little bit of an idea of how things are doing. That's not every single plant, but that's a look at a sampling of them and a little update on how the tree and bush planting is going. Over here at Nyth, thank you so much for watching these videos and spending some of your very valuable time choosing to do that. We hope you found something that was useful, educational, helpful, maybe save someone else some time and trouble, or just something just plain beautiful. If you don't want to miss any videos, subscribe and hit the bell. And thanks for coming along on our journey as we build a new little homestead with our tiny house and everything to come.